Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Today we have our extension about talking about Memorial Day and Jewish dedication. Of course, the list goes on and on and on of dedicated men and women. I have right in front of me a very well-known person, Rabbi Alexander D. Good, who was a Reform rabbi in York, Pennsylvania. And he has meaning to me because 2 times a day on the way to Lancaster Yeshiva, I have to drive through his town over there. And of course, it's been a long time. His shul is no longer a shul. I did have a meeting with Rabbi Jeff Astrakhan, who's the current rabbi of what would have been Rabbi Alexander D. Good's synagogue. But that's why I feel a bit of a connection to him, and I researched some more about him. Now, he's mostly famous. I just want to mention something about Rabbi Good because he was the catalyst for the monument that we have in Arlington, which one of your members, Howard Pinsky, was involved in. But he's mostly famous because in 1944, Chaplain Good was on the USAT Dorchester, and unfortunately, that was a troop transport that was in Torpedo Alley and went up there in very cold waters up near Greenland. And of course, historians debate, did they have any idea what they were in for or not? But the bottom line is Rabbi Good was there together with 3 other chaplains of other faiths. The big story that you heard of, and there were witnesses alive who saw it, and they were there at the dedication to the chaplain's monument in Arlington. I mean, they had people that were actually there. They had a veteran that had been in the water in the lifeboat from the Dorchester who knew Rabbi Good and the other chaplains, and they had a fellow from the Coast Guard ship that saved them and pulled them out of the water, which they had to literally pull them out of the water because they had absolutely no strength yet. But the thing is that the 4 chaplains gave their life preservers to the soldiers. Now, I don't believe it's a Titanic story. If you check in most accounts of it, when the Dorchester got hit by a German U-boat, and it got hit more than once, extremely icy waters, no swimming for safety, it seems to be they did have enough life preservers. Unlike the Titanic, the trouble seems to be on one of the torpedoes, it did something to the USAT Dorchester that a lot of them were lost and everything that went on over there. So I think they did originally they did have enough life preservers. But what happened was the ship started to list. The rabbi and the priest did an unbelievable job of keeping everybody calm, which they had to do all along because the soldiers were a little bit suspicious that they had heard stories and they figured out where they were. At some point, they kept them calm down to the last minute. The rabbi and the priest gave away their life preservers. One addition about Rabbi Good is he also gave away a pair of gloves. And just in case you're not sure why that's a big deal, these troops went down into icy waters near Greenland. Even if you make it into the lifeboat, you're not going to live unless you can hold on to the boat. Because the boat had extremely icy water, and you can't hold on, and there were men that fell over. So Rabbi Good giving away his pair of gloves, that could be the difference between life and death. The most moving thing about them is there are witnesses that saw the 4 chaplains join hands, arms, and they heard Rabbi Good saying Shema, and they heard the priest saying, whatever they say, our Father, whatever, and they watched them go down like that. The only consolation, if there can be consolation, some people theorize that in water that cold, maybe they died quickly. But whatever it was, now, years ago, when I gave some classes about Rabbi Good, I was talking to my Rebbe, Rabbi Moshe H. Glazer, about Rabbi Good, because this issue of, according to Jewish law, do I risk my life for others? How much do I risk my life for others? Is it an obligation? In any situation that could come up, not necessarily a military situation, there's a lot of talk about it in all the Jewish books. But Rabbi Glazer said to me, without getting into all the halach and legal things, the bottom line is Alexander D. Good, together with the other priest, They gave up their life because they decided on the spot, I'm the chaplain, I'm important, but the troops come first. Whoever they are, Jewish, not Jewish, whoever they are. And that made a mammoth Kiddush Hashem. There's umpteen websites about this. And it just made religion and the Jewish people look pretty good that somebody would do something like that. He was survived by a wife and a daughter. They're gone. At the dedication in Arlington, I believe a nephew or a niece showed up, but there was nobody left. all gone from them. Now, I checked up on what kind of rabbi he was in York, PA. This one aside is very, very interesting. In York, Pennsylvania, where there aren't a lot of Jews. You have a JCC here, gentlemen? Do you? No? You go to Washington Bolivar? Okay. The JCC in York, PA is over 91% Gentile. So this is York, Pennsylvania, okay? There used to be more Jews. There used to be an Orthodox congregation there too once upon a time. So York, you don't have a whole lot of Jews. There's a Chabad fellow that comes in there, tries to do things. And people try, but, compared to Annapolis, it's not much. But there is a public school there where I'm made to understand there is not a single Jewish kid, and the name of the public school is Rabbi Alexander D. Good Public School. Wow. And you could look this up on the internet. It's very easy. When you walk into the Rabbi Astrakhan, who's the Reform rabbi at the synagogue now, he told me when you walk into the school, there's a gorgeous mural of Rabbi Good and the three priests. So and the school makes sure these little kids know about it. So it's just neat. There's not one Jewish kid in the school, and they get educated, and they're named after Rabbi Good and the chaplains, and religions working together. Which I have to tell you was very, very nice, because Rebbitzin Sackett, Rashida's wife from Lancaster, she informed me, York, Pennsylvania, I'm sorry, I know you got kids there. I love you dearly. You're a military man. You'll look out for them. York, Pennsylvania doesn't have the best history when it comes to faith relations. I also spoke to Dr. Michael Feldberg about this. Back in the day, there were like neo-Nazi kind of people there who really wanted any kind of Jew out of there, but that's going back more to the 20s. In more recent times, there's been some skinhead kind of problems. But Rabbi Astrakhan assured me, he goes, listen, I have children, they go to school here, because, let me tell you what really brought it on. I was at a meeting for a short time, I did some volunteer work for the JCC, and I asked the woman at the meeting, if I get gas at your gas station in York, can I have my yarmulke on or I should wear a cap? And she says, I don't know, because she had some personal things. She had a repairman worker in her house, young lady, younger than me. She had a repairman worker in her house, and he said, you're the first Jew I ever saw. You seem to be a nice, normal person. I hear all kinds of stories. And she says, where do you get your stories from? Around, but I see you Jews aren't so bad. So this is the same woman that told me, I don't know if you should wear your yarmulke noticeably at the gas station. But the Rabbi Astrakhan, from which would be Rabbi Good's temple, his building became a interesting church downtown. He said, don't worry, you can wear your yarmulke, you're going to get gas, nothing's going to happen, you're going to be okay. But anyway, it's just really nice, though, that you have a non-Jewish school giving honor to a rabbi and to three priests, and there's not even any Jews there. York, Pennsylvania, but listen, I have to be honest with you. York, the city of York, is a big black eye to the Jewish people, because we all know York, Pennsylvania, and Lancaster are named for cities in England. And one of the worst pogroms, bloodiest pogroms in history was in York, Britain. And on Tisha B'Av, at the end of the Knesset, look in any Knesset, any Lamentations, near the end, they got a good few pages there for the Jews that were murdered in York and Beauport in England. So the name York, I'm not trying to give you the heebie-jeebies, and I'm in my 5th year of driving through York 2 times, and especially Gil, you forgive me, I'm just saying, the name New York can be a little bit haunting. But what I do want to mention about Rabbi Good is two particular things. So besides the tremendous Kiddush Hashem he made in giving up his life to save others, and there are soldiers around that knew him and the priests, and they tell you what a wonderful fellow he was. The biggest thing was keeping the soldiers calm, because that was the hardest thing, especially once the torpedo hit. But there were two things on his agenda. He felt reform went a little bit too far, and he tried to convince his congregation, if you come to shul and you sing L'cha Daidi, you're not going to drop dead. And making Kiddush in your house will not be the end of the world, because I guess at that time he felt reform had just thrown away too much, and he was trying to convince his congregation, try a mitzvah, try this mitzvah, try that mitzvah. It really, really won't hurt you. All right. Now I'll be honest with you. I mean, in all the pictures of him, he does not wearing a yarmulke, a real reform rabbi. But there were some things he wanted to put back. Another thing that he really was into, and again, York, Pennsylvania needed this. He really was into inviting the non-Jews into the shul to see the sukkah, just to see what we're about, because he felt that maybe if the Gentiles of York, Pennsylvania would see that Jews don't have horns, and we're basically nice people and we're not casting evil spells. And he felt the more they could see us do mitzvahs and how we daven, he thought that would dispel anti-Semitism. That was one thing that he was really, really into. But he gave our life for this country, and the Jewish people and non-Jewish people points to him and the other chaplains with a lot of pride. And sadly, if we want to daven for him or learn for him, you got to do it wherever he is, because unfortunately, as Earl would say, his cemetery is Davy Jones' locker. Unfortunately. All right, but let me go back to the introduction part. I'm so bad with that. It's a good thing I didn't give you this. See, these days I try to print out what I'm supposed to do, but I always go off. But Rabbi Good was right there, and I think of him, all the time. So I deferred to him. Now, Menachem Begin had to sneak in. You forgive me, because we've been doing a series on him, and he just, especially since the King of Atlantic City is here. What's the
King of Atlantic City?
What?
Larry. His name?
Larry, the King of Atlantic City, the King of the Jersey Shore is here. So we got to make sure to get a little Begin. Begin makes a statement about Jews being soldiers and the evolution of that. And we have to remember, there's a lot of different kinds of Jewish soldiers and soldierettes. There's no such word, but I said it anyway. So, and just a warning. Now, I don't know what Earl and Gil say about this. Besides Earl and Gil, has anyone ever here met a woman who was a World War II whack? Did you ever meet those women? You met them. You met them? Don't mess with them. I gave a talk on World War II at an old age home in Baltimore, and I had mentioned that a certain doctor, who's in the pictures there, Dr. Yitz Schwartz, who was very close with Frances Slanger, who was 3 classes to herself. She's buried in Roxbury, Massachusetts. She was the very first United States nurse to die in action at D-Day. Frances Slanger, her Yiddish name was Fredo, little Jewish girl from Boston. I was talking about Frances Slanger, Zechron Livracha, and Dr. Yitz Schwartz, who lived through the war. And I had mentioned that there was a question about his military duty, because he was a heavy fellow. So it was a discussion where they were going to put him, where they were going to station him. He was an army surgeon, Dr. Yitz Schwartz. He had a good career afterwards. I forget if it was Connecticut or Massachusetts. I think his son's a doctor too. But anyway, I just made the mistake of mentioning that Dr. Schwartz, they weren't sure what to do with him about giving him full military responsibility. Basically, he didn't expect to wind up in the heat of the action in D-Day over there. Actually, him in the middle of trying to save Frances Slanger, she got killed by a wayward piece of shrapnel, which wasn't supposed to be there, because the Germans, unlike the Japanese, did not fire on Red Cross tents. The Japanese did, the Germans usually didn't, but something happened over there, and the shrapnel came, that's all story in itself, and killed Francis. When he was just before he was trying to save her, something went off and tore his thumb practically off. His thumb was dangling, but he was a good surgeon. He kept going and tried to save her. So I mentioned something that there was a military question where to station him because he was a heavy-set fellow. There was a woman in the crowd, must have been 78. She stood up and gave old Jewish Bobby, and she gives me a face. No excuse! No excuse! I don't care what he weighs. I served, my family served, my brother served. No excuse for his weight. You serve and that's it. I thought I was ready to, okay, yes ma'am, 10 push, and this lady she was, oh buddy. But right away she went into, you know what I'm talking about. Those are scary women. They'll take you out. You ever meet one like that? I mean, this lady been out of the military a long time, but she went into the mode, yeah, yes ma'am, whatever you say. So anyway, but there's a lot of different kind of soldiers, that's just because I said soldierettes, and then there's also the ones that served in Israel and the ones that served in both, like David Marcus and Rabbi Singer, who we speak about a lot, his pictures there also. He served in the 6-Day War, and he also served in Vietnam in consecutive years. But Bacon has a statement about Jews fighting. Now, we spoke last time that the British really figured they could trigger the Arabs to beat us up whenever it was convenient, shake up the Jews, scare the Jews, immigration will slow down, it'll cease, because we want Jews to be in Palestine, but not too many of them. So Bacon explains in Revolt that they really were banking on the Jews don't know how to fight. And they figured, the Jews would never make an uprising. They're timid little people, little Jewish guy over there, little Tevye, and the Arabs will shake them up. They won't fight back. It'll be fine. So this is how Bacon describes the British mindset. Those Jews, they may be good merchants, they may be good businessmen, but Jews, soldiers, fighters, Jews. When the British used to even just think about it, it made them laugh. Ha! Jews haven't handled arms for thousands of years. We will frighten off the Jews that aren't in Palestine yet. And the ones that are here, we'll have the Arabs scare them so much, they'll be running to us British for protection. We got it all figured out. Those Jews, they don't know how to pick up anything. They will just pray to the British bayonet. Now, that's what he said was in the British mindset. But to balance that out, now, of course, there were Jews in other wars also in Europe. But he has a quote here from a Jewish Israeli hero, military hero, named Meir Feinstein. Meir Feinstein was supposed to get hung by the British for his activities fighting for the state of Israel before it was the state of Israel. And Weisblum, you correct me, in the end, he committed suicide with Barzani with the grenade. No, isn't it Feinstein? So he has a quote here from Meir Feinstein that shows whatever level of guts the Jews had to fight before for patriotism, whether it was Asher Levi, whatever war they were in, but with Israel coming into the picture, there's a different kind of Jewish fight. Now, Bacon prefaces that, he goes, this is a quote from the one-armed Meir Feinstein, among the great heroes of our generation. I don't even think he lived to be 30. So he had a chance to speak at the trial, and this is what he said. How blind you are, you British tyrants! Have you not yet learned whom you are fighting in this struggle? We Jews are unexampled in human history. Do you believe we are to be frightened by death? You think you can scare Jews with your threats and your hangings? We Jews have heard the rattle of trucks that bore our brothers, our sisters, our parents, and took away the slaughter of the best of our people. That never happened to anybody like that. We ask ourselves every day, how are we better than all those who perished in the Holocaust and the tragedies before? What makes us who still live better than the millions of our brothers and sisters? In what lies our virtue? For we could have been among and with them in the days of fear and in the moments that came before death. To these recurring questions, our conscience makes one reply. Why were we spared? Why was our generation spared? We were not spared in order to be slaves for you, to be oppressed by you, and we Jews that live through it all, we're not awaiting another Treblinka. We were spared in order to ensure life and freedom and honor for ourselves, our people, for our children, and our children's children. We were spared in order that there should be no repetition of what happened there, of what has happened. And it's still likely to happen here under your rule, the rule of treachery, the rule of blood. He says it is the love of the homeland and Jewish freedom, hatred for the oppression invader. We Jews are now burning steel. You cannot break us. Very powerful. So Jews were always good, always much better fighters than they expected. But he just says, with the state of Israel and having something of our own, it's a whole different ballgame. So with that, I want to share with you just about two people. I have a whole list, but we just have so much time. First, I want to mention A.B. Freund. I've spoken about A.B. Freund before. Rabbi Moshe P. Freund. He was a chief medic in the Battle of the Bulge. And he was very dedicated to keeping his religion as much as he realistically could. His father had a great line. When he went off to battle, came from a very observant family. His father said, A.B., the army doesn't have Steve. You're not going to get gourmet kosher meals. You might not get any kosher meals. If the Jewish Welfare Board sends you something, no, Earl, you had a few packages from the Jewish Welfare Board in your life? All right, you're going to get what you get from the Jewish Welfare Board. You may have seen somewhere a very, very popular picture. You know that picture from Katz's Deli in New York? Buy a salami for your son in the army. All right, so if you get one of those, a very cute picture with a very Jewish-looking guy with a big deli. So he said, son, the reality is you got to eat to live, and you're not going to have kosher all the time. At some point, you're going to have to eat treif. Mom and I can't send you a pekala every week. But he said, son, listen, I know you, I watch you, my dear son, and I know that when you eat meat, you love to suck out the moyach, the marrow. You love doing that. Zunala, as megeisel mulchama, when you're going to go in the war and you're going to have to eat that treif piece of meat to stay alive, do me a favor. Do yourself a favor, do God a favor. Eat the meat. You don't have to suck out the marrow. You'll have enough koyach without that. So don't eat more treif than you have to. So he said his father's words stuck with him till he came back from the war, and he was as careful as he could about kashrus, and he was also careful about tefillin. He wore tefillin every single day till his tefillin got blown up. There was one day he had his tefillin in his shelter, and they got all of a sudden alert. Everybody out. They ran out. Seconds later, building was blown up with his tefillin. So he said there were a few weeks there he didn't have tefillin until he got hold of the regimental chaplain, but he schlepped that tefillin around with him all over the place. Now, how did A.B. live? Now, I gotta stress this. A.B.'s daughter Ashira told me, when you speak to my father about the war, be careful. There are days when he can speak and the days that he can't. He was a chief medic. He saw things that would scare the average doctor. Not Dr. Kremens, but in a war, you're seeing people blown up. But she said I hope you don't see that too often, doctor. But she said you have to be careful with my father. When he's willing to talk, he'll talk. But till days, he'll shake his head. He says, I can't even talk to him. So how was he saved? There was a soldier that was injured, and he needed more attention than a medic could give him. He had to be brought to a field hospital. So the officer in charge asked for a volunteer. It's going to be dangerous to drive this vehicle. You're going to be in harm's way. But either he gets driven to a field hospital, this guy's going to die. So A.B. Avram Yochum Getzel Freund volunteered to drive the guy. He was terrified. He got the guy to the field hospital, made it there in one piece, and then he became more terrified because he found out afterwards his entire group, all the troops he was with, were captured and most of them killed. So there was more to be terrified about. So you have to imagine what this man went through life with, why me? What's God doing over here? If I would have stayed there, did this mitzvah save me? Not, what's going on? So, that he was a very, very wonderful, wonderful person, valued by every shul he went. Very, very lovely man. He was like the Zaidi of our shul, but you imagine going through something like that. So that's how Avi was saved. Very, very, very wonderful, very, very wonderful person. And he didn't overly, tout what a hero he was, but he was very much appreciative of our shul. One other piece of the introduction I forgot. I really ought to give this out so you hold me to task. Let me just tell you about one rabbi and about Moshe P. No, I'm going to tell you about Herb Halpern. There's so much to talk about, but everybody has a schedule. Rabbi Israel Tabak. I can depend on this guy. All right. There's a beautiful shul in Baltimore named Shaarei Zion Shul. It's not the original Shaarei Zion. You want to see the real Shaarei Zion? You have to enjoy driving in dangerous neighborhoods. That's what you have to do. There's a place called Park Circle where my wife was born, the original Smells Bakery, on the way to the zoo. Don't go there. But that's where Shaarei Zion is, a big, nice church with the 10 Commandments up there. Rabbi Israel Tabak, a blessed memory, was the rabbi there, and he wrote a book called 3 Worlds. Now, Rabbi Tabak was a rabbi from Europe, educated in Europe, but he was the rabbi in Shaarei Zion during World War II. During that war, on Shabbos, instead of giving a sermon, he would read letters from troops. The shul was packed, because in those days, no email, no cell phones. How often could a soldier make a call during World War II if he could at all? The shul was packed, and he said it developed a special connection in his congregation because people wanted to know how their father, their brother, their son was doing, and a lot of times the families only knew what they knew because they came to the shul and the rabbi would read letters from the troops that he received. It was a very, very moving thing, and Shaarei Zion for years had a plaque, a special yahrzeit plaque dedicated to soldiers who gave their life. Now, Rabbi Tabak one day had a very, very, very big wedding to officiate at the shul. Steve would kill to cater such a wedding like this. Big, big, fancy wedding. Reicha mentioned rich people. He's getting ready, and a soldier comes in. It's not in the fanciest uniform, whatever he's wearing. Not so clean, with a young lady. And he says, Rabbi, this is my fiance. They just called me. I thought my leave was going to be till here. My leave is till here. I have to leave in a day. Is there any way you can marry me and this young lady? So the rabbi had to think fast. He needs a wedding for this soldier and this young lady, and he's got to do this rich people's wedding for the shul. Just so much hours in a day. So Rabbi Tabak thunk fast. And I'm telling you this because I wasn't around then. Those who were will say, yeah, that's the way Jews were. Those who weren't will say, wow, that's a different kind of Jew. Rabbi Tabak went over to the parents of the fancy schmancy wedding, and he told them, I got a GI over here. I got married. His leave just got cut short. He just get married. Could we possibly consider a double wedding? And he was like, these are very fancy people. And the people said, Rabbi, what's the question? Where are they? Not only are you going to do a double wedding, they're going to sit at the dais. And I want them to be completely participant in everything we spent on their children. This young man, they're giving for our country. They're part of the family. Bring them on. And like Rabbi Tabak writes in his book, it was no question. It was no question whatsoever about pomp or anything like that. They would take it in, and he writes in the book that the soldier and his collar, they really weren't dressed for the occasion, but they were completely included, and it was with great pride. So that was World War II. This is Annapolis, so I'm going to say World War II Baltimore, World War II Maryland. But the more people that I interviewed and spoke to, I understand that was a very, very common way of thinking and acting for our troops back in that time. So supportive like that for their cause and willing to do just about anything for them. So I just wanted to mention that because it's just such a Jewish patriotism that Rabbi Tabak was able to display, and he was there for the troops in many ways. And I just wish and hope that there would be some way. And I know we try to help the troops and things like that. I just wish there was a way nowadays that we could maybe be more supportive of our troops. When I was a Rebbe in Norfolk, Virginia, in Norfolk, Virginia, you know what you could get? Sometimes you could get I don't know what they're called. Now, midshipman, that's only here. In Norfolk, if you're in Norfolk Naval Base and you get an officer, you get a soldier, I don't know what the right name is. Come on, Annapolis people, educate me.
What level?
See, Basachves. All right. So I'm just saying, if you were in Norfolk, you could get a serviceman to come to your house for Shabbos. It was really neat. It was really nice. We had a medic one time. He came for the whole Shabbos. Shabbos guy. I mean, some Baltimore, and we have some some installations, but it's not that easy to get someone for Shabbos. From everything I hear, that in Annapolis, it used to be very, very easy to get troops for Shabbos in shul, right? If I read your pictures,
every holiday, the people would invite the midshipmen to join for the meal.
They came here for Shabbat all the time.
but now now not as much.
I had a lot of sailors in people's houses.
So that's beautiful. So I just hope we could be there for the troops, even a little bit as much as we used to. I'm just going to tell you quickly what this guy told me. Shemesh Shabbos medic stayed at our house for Shabbos. Then I lived in Virginia Beach, Virginia. He came for the whole Shabbos. He went to Lubavitch with us to daven, and we asked. He's a little guy, and we asked him, "Do you get picked on at all because you're Jewish?" So he smiled. It never bothered me. So we asked him in the very Jewish state of Virginia, and he's in the Navy, and Earl could give us his own class on Jews in the Navy, how well that works, it doesn't work, because you already told me. So we asked the guy, we didn't say anything about his size, why don't they ever bother you? Now, this is a shul. I'm going to say very carefully what he said, and as we say in Spanish, in Hebrew, Hamevin Yavin, he who understands will understand. So the medic looked at me like this. He says, I will tell you why nobody bothers me for my religion. A lot of the sailors really treasure their leave. And when the sailors have their leave and run around in town, they do a lot of things they shouldn't do. And when they come back, a lot of times they need a shot, and I'm the guy that has the shot. They're really nice to me because they need me. So no one's anti-Semitic to me. So you can fill in the blanks yourself, but this is what the guy told my wife and I. So that's what he did. Mr. Freund had a little bit of a story with that, like that also. But all right, let me quickly tell you about Herb Heilbrunn. There's a lot of pictures there of a Jewish fellow together with an African-American fellow. That is Herb Heilbrunn. So in a nutshell, I know it's getting on there. Herb Heilbrunn. Now Earl, in World War II, was he flying a B-52 or a B-29 Flying Fortress?
B-17. Europe or Asia?
If I have the number wrong, correct me.
They're both.
Where? Europe?
Flying Fortress.
Yeah,
Europe, B-17.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Herb Heilbrunn was a pilot in a Flying Fortress, whatever the number is. Herb he didn't come from a very observant family. He was a little bit jolted. When he first started thinking about his Judaism, he found out that during World War II, there were Jewish soldiers that had the H on their dog tag altered because they were scared they were going to fall behind enemy lines, or German will get hold of you and do who knows what. So that was where he first began to really think about his Judaism, because he never thought of it like that. When he found out that there were people that had a special procedure done to your dog tag, it started to make him think. That was the whole catalyst to get him to think more about his Judaism. He flew over heroically, and even if you just watch the movies, a flying fortress is a powerful vehicle, but it's only safe if you have PF Mustangs flying around you. Did I get that right?
Fighter escort.
Okay. Now here's the thing. Back in the day, the ones who flew the flying fortresses were white fellows. A lot of the guys in the Mustangs were African American fellows. African American fellows who took a lot of garbage and had to wait a very, very long time. If you saw the movie about the Tuskegee Airmen or you read it, those kind of fellows, and it took them a long time to get to do it, and they got to do it. So this is what happened. Every time Herb flew a sortie, I know I got that right, around him were the Mustangs protecting the flying fortress. And he knew that it was black servicemen. And it was black servicemen he didn't know, because back in those days, the white Air Force fellows and the black Air Force fellows were not allowed near each other. So he flew and flew and flew and flew and flew. Almost lost his life many, many times. Herb Hellbrun over there. And he knew there were these pilots flying around him, knocking out the Messerschmitts, whatever there was, and they were saving his life. And he didn't even know the guys. Couldn't even shake their hand. War is over. Herb made it back. And Herb got older and older and older. And Herb became 80. And Herb said, you know, I don't know that much about Judaism, but I know a Jew is supposed to be thankful. I never thanked those guys. I never thanked those African American guys. So he began doing research, and he found out that there was a particular reunion of a particular squadron, and he made up his mind he's going to go there. And of course people say, what do you mean? You're a white guy, you're going to go with me? I'm going. And he went in there, and he starts speaking to these elderly black pilots, and they're discussing, you know, when did you fly? When were you there? Which mission? This, that. So he finally found one fellow. They compared notes, dates, and places. And Herb looked at the guy. He said, you saved my life. It turned out a whole bunch of time, this black fellow had been in a Mustang escorting and defending this Jewish guy in the flying fortress. And they figured out without any question that this fellow had saved his life. So when you go out, I have a picture there of Herb together with his African American buddy over there, a whole bunch of pictures of them. And like they were hugging and kissing. He says, you saved my life. They became fast friends. Now, they were alive 2 years ago. They went all over the United States on a speaking tour, telling their story, teaching people how minorities have to get along, they got to stick their neck out for each other, race relations, and how you have to stand up for your country. And these were men that, you know, each one was a hero in a way to the other one, but they never got to shake hands. And there are beautiful pictures of them with the arms around each other, sitting together. And as we said the other day, Kiddush Hashem for Jewish people comes in many, many forms. Sometimes it's coming to shul, sometimes it's finding an old war buddy and saying, thank you, I love you, thanks for saving my life, and giving him a hug. So we should merit that our troops shouldn't be in harm's way, whether it's in Israel or here, and we should have time to discuss together all kinds of more good things about Jewish and non-Jewish veterans. Thank you very much.